There's nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. Welcome to The Bleeders, a podcast and support group about book writing and publishing. I'm writer and podcaster Courtney Kosak, and each week I'll bring you new conversations with authors, agents, and publishers about how to write and sell books. Hello, Bleeders! Great news! My debut memoir has finally found its perfect publisher. Girl Gone Wild, that is the name of the memoir, is coming out with Trio House Press in March 2026. I am so freaking excited. The publisher's marketplace announcement came out this week. I was like, ah! Also, Trio House Press is based in my home state of Minnesota. I love the editor. She's a Minnesota gal. It all feels very kismet. I love it. And hitting this milestone reminded me that I have a series in the can called What to Expect When You're on Submission that I have just been sitting on, and I have not really started publishing yet. And if I'm being honest, I think I pressed pause on it because, first of all, I had lots of other stuff to publish, and I was going through the submission process for the first time with another project, a narrative nonfiction book that still has not found its home, but hopefully does soon, fingers crossed. And I think it was just like too much of a bummer to finish the interviews. I did a bunch of interviews. I had a few more that I wanted to do for the series, and it just was too depressing. So I was like, I'm just gonna wait. I'm going to wait on this until I am more mentally able to put it out there. And that is now. I guess the lesson is like, it's going to happen. I know it feels like it takes forever. Going on submission sucks. That's why I came up with this series and I'm bringing you these interviews. But ultimately, if you're working really hard on your art and you are pouring your heart and soul into a project you really believe in, I believe that you will ultimately have success, but it might take a while. And so that is why I'm bringing you this series. It's a tough process. And so I am bringing you a little hope through other people's stories. And today we're going to start off with Greg Mania. He's sharing his experience of finding a good home for his first book, Born to Be Public. It landed at a very cool small press, Clash Books. I've got my eye on you, Clash. I love what they're doing. And in this interview, Greg also spills how he found his agent, what it was like to go on submission a second time, and he offers advice for authors going through this hellacious process. There's no other word for it. I'm sure there is, but that's the best one. So I will be bringing you more of these interviews. I'm going to publish these every other week. I'm going to alternate them with regular interviews, and I'm going to do that for the next couple months. And then I'm going to add some more. I'm going to do some fresh ones for you. So stay tuned for that, and let's get into it.
Hi, my name is Greg Mania. I'm the author of the memoir Born to Be Public, which is out now through Clash Books, and I write the newsletter SOS, Save Our Serotonin, on Substack.
Yay. Well, I'm taking Chloe's 1-year generator, and you came to talk to our class. So I got to know you through that. And then I also read your Substack about being on submission. So I was like, oh, I have to talk to Greg about this hellacious process.
Yes, that's the perfect word to describe it.
So, yeah, tell me about, your first book is out. Tell me about the process with that one, and then we can talk about your latest experience.
Sure, absolutely. So, the whole entire publication process is anything but linear. So, it's common to experience some bumps in the road, some more than others. I have heard myriad stories of things that have gone bump in the submission stack. Let's go with that. So I had an interesting trajectory with my first book. It's not always as streamlined. You get an agent. I'm not like David Sedaris. I can't just like cough up a book idea on a napkin and just like send that to my agent. My agent just like sells a 6-figure book deal. That's what I'm working towards. But, as someone that is still cutting their teeth in this industry, yeah, selling my first book was an interesting ride. I didn't know anything about the entire publication process prior to submitting. So all I knew was I had an idea for a book and I just started writing a first draft. And while I was writing that first draft, I was sort of concurrently learning about how to get an agent. What is a query
Uh-huh.
letter? How do you find an agent? What is a book proposal? I didn't even know that I had to, my first book was, nonfiction. And I didn't know that most books are sold on proposal. So I had to learn how to write a proposal. So that whole process took a few years. And, I started querying agents and eventually I signed with an agent. And then we spent about a year editing the proposal and the manuscript. She was very hands on editorial. And then we went out on submission, submitted to 10 houses. And then my previous agent got another job offer, but it was in publicity. So they pivoted and sort of just took that new job. And I didn't have an agent and I was already on submission. And unfortunately, I was just sent a list of the houses where that proposal was at. And yeah, it was definitely stressful. Obviously, there's like no bad blood or anything. Like I'm very happy for my previous agent. They are killing it in their position and are doing great things. Agenting just really wasn't for them. So yeah, I panicked. I started calling up my writer friends and I was like, what do I do? Like I'm on submission. I don't have an agent anymore. So I had to just start from the beginning. So thankfully, by that point, I spent a few years cultivating relationships and meeting writers and becoming like an active literary citizen. And with that, I was able to form these really meaningful friendships and relationships. And thankfully, the community came and got my ass and was like, okay, reach out to my agent, reach out to this. So I had a good pool of agents where I started reaching out to, but I was like, you know what? I don't want to prolong this process. So I also took a two-pronged approach where I was reaching out to agents. I was also reading like the poets and writers database of like small presses that were accepting unsolicited submissions. So I was combing through making a list. There's other small to medium sized presses that do like open submission periods. So I had like multiple sheets of like agents, submission periods, small presses. And I was also going to bookstores and reading their small press titles and seeing what comps there are. And eventually I came upon a book by Clash Books at the Strand. And I was like, oh, this, their voices are very zany and brazen and they're doing really cool boundary pushing stuff.
Yeah.
So I ended up sending them, a query letter and I sent them a draft and they bought the book. So I sold my first book myself and it worked out perfectly, actually. And now, in hindsight, I wouldn't have done it any other way because we were both sort of starting out at the time. Obviously, they were more established than I was, but we really grew together as press and author. And through my time working with them, by the time the paperback came out, we had a distribution deal. And so the paperback and the audiobook were put under like the I don't know, I'm an idiot, but it was under distribution. So I was able, I got in at the right time. So like, by the way, I don't know what that accent was. I just like had 13 different accents. So we're just gonna acknowledge it and move on. That was like a hybrid of like a New Jersey, maybe also Caribbean and maybe British. That was a very odd twist. Okay,
But
anyway.
what's the distribution? What is that? So like it went out more widely than Clash's initial distribution channels afforded?
So basically, what happened was Clash was on a print on demand model
Okay.
through Ingram. So my book, the hardcover, basically you could order it anywhere, but it wasn't like they printed 10,000 copies. And then it was basically if a bookstore, a library, whoever wanted it, they would print like, okay, let's say Books Are Magic wants 10 copies. They print 10,
Uh-huh.
send it to them. And during that time, I was really become very self-taught in publicity literacy.
Which you've been crushing it. I feel like you got to give us some tips.
Thank you. Yeah, and for me, I knew that, okay, as a debut author, especially in the nonfiction space, I have to have a strong debut because that's going to dictate how easy it is to sell my second, third, and, subsequent books. So for years early on, I started saving up money because I didn't know where I would end up. I didn't know if I would have in-house marketing. So I would start taking pieces of my paycheck and putting them in my savings because I knew when the time came, I wanted to hire a freelance publicist.
Hmm.
So by the time I published with Clash, between myself and Clash and my publicist, Justin Hargett, who is brilliant, used to be at Soho Press, I believe, just a great guy to work with. So by that time, we were really able to like posture and be like, you know what, this is a small press book, but we're going to act like this is a big five lead title. There's a certain level of delusion that I operate in.
Yes, me too.
And because we did that, this small press book, it ended up in Oprah Magazine and NPR and all these lists because, we took the time to really nurture it. And the duration between selling a book and publishing it, it can be, a year or two, depending on when it's slated to release. So we took those few years while I was editing and going draft after draft. I was also, we were putting out like what's it called? Like the merch for books, like what's that called? Not gag gifts. I'm a professional wordsmith and I need guidance here.
Yeah, the like
What's it called? Not
swag.
flash. Swag, yes. Like we were doing swag. I was like, let's make matches, let's make lighters, let's do cool shit. And then I started using the relationships that I cultivated with the multiple websites that I freelance for, and we were able to have a really successful marketing campaign, and it was really fun. And yes, I debuted during a pandemic, and of course, I would love to have a book tour, but it worked out for the best for me because I was able to bring like Lindy West did my LA event, and we were able to do it over Zoom.
Oh,
Like
nice.
able to do it with not just a friend, but someone that's like a literary hero of mine on my own book tour. That was sort of a blessing because I don't know if she would be able to come into LA on like an actual in-person book tour. So yeah, that first year, because of the hardcover and because of two other titles, Jackie S's Daryl blew up with Clash, and Tia Hasiks Vlahovic, and I'm sorry if I butchered her name, Life of the Party, these three titles, they performed so well that Clash was able to sign a distribution deal. And then all of our books sort of fell under the umbrella of this national distribution. So when the paperback came out a year later, it was a bit easier to get it because then bookstores, it was just easier to distribute it. So it was definitely a wild ride, but I would have done it all over again if I had to.
That is amazing. So, okay, you have this small press book that you make the most of and it winds up being fantastic. And how does that inform now your next moves? And like, did you get an agent after that process? And then, what's going on now?
Sure. Yeah, I was able to get an agent. I am represented by the wonderful, magnanimous Alexa Stark over at Writer's
Oh,
House.
nice.
I actually have had my eye on her my entire career, though. I remember submitting like a very early, like a query for Born Me Public, like, I don't know, first or second draft. It was not ready for anything. And I never, I sent her like a query through her former agency's website and never heard back. And I'm like, that is totally fine. It was not ready for anything. But I did eventually sign with her, I think about a year and a half ago, because I have a new book that is on submission now. And I sent her the proposal and we had a phone call and the rest was history. And it's been a dream working with her. And it's really good to have like a partner like that in my corner.
So, I mean, you knew more going into this next book. So, did you feel like your proposal was like more ready this time? And did she work with you on notes on that? How did that go down?
Yeah, what I love most about, I mean, I love many things about Alexa, but she's also very hands-on editorially, which as an author, I prefer that. A lot of authors have their own different styles, their own methods of working with their editors and agents. I really like someone that's able to not just be familiar with my voice. Like Alexa will be like, okay, you're putting too much humor here because I think you're trying to shy away from the painful stuff. And I'm like, you're right. I am overcompensating. I needed someone to tell me to pull back on the jokes here a bit. So I really love that aspect of that. But yeah, I had a proposal, like a draft complete by the time I reached out to her. And we have gone back and forth and we've gone, through many drafts of it. But we're at a place now where I think it's pretty solid. And yeah, we are going to hit the ground running, I think, this fall. And we'll see where it goes. But it has been, again, it's gone through many iterations. So I've gone on submission, I think like I'm going to say two separate times because it was a completely different book project a year ago than it is now.
Okay, so I'm currently on, I mean, part of the reason I'm doing this series is to like, for myself, I am on submission. It's driving me fucking crazy
Oh my
because
God.
it's my first time and I just don't really know what to expect. So it's been now a few months, like it's been this summer, but I hear stories about people where it takes them 15 months or like whatever. So, like,
Yeah.
is this normal?
Especially now.
Is it okay if it takes a while?
It is absolutely normal. It's absolutely okay. That doesn't make it any less anxiety inducing. But I will say, because I'm also, we're in the trenches together in the submission process. I do know, and some other author friends who are on submission, that this season has been especially slow.
I've heard that.
There has been a lot of shifts, a lot of changes, a lot of let's go with unpredictability in our industry right now. And I think that's sort of bleeding into what editors are buying and how much they can buy. I'm sure there's projects that they would love to buy, but structural changes abound, may curtail that opportunity. So I do know specifically now, I want to say that it has been quiet, but I also think it's not any different than it usually is because it could take you 15 months. It could take you a few weeks. But I think right now, especially, it has been a bit longer. And this is not just me posturing. I remember in maybe June or May, I was like, it's been a few weeks. Like, is this normal? And like, I talked to some other author friends and they were like, yeah, we're also waiting too. And these author friends of mine, they're smarter and more brilliant than me. So if they can get their books sold, like what the fuck am I going to do? So it's just for everyone. And I talked to a few agents and they're like, yeah, it's just been really quiet. And it's not because the projects, the projects are gold. It's just a slow time right now. I think it's just a lot of factors, a lot of shifts and changes. So I think we just have to be patient and, more important, lean on each other during this time because it is anxiety. It is stressful. I'm texting, we have group texts going on. I'm like, I have friends checking on me, being like, hey, did you repot your plants? Because, you're going to go bonkers sitting there waiting for an email to come in. So it's definitely been tough. So I think we need to just, lean on each other a bit because it is stressful.
Yeah. So like with Born to Be Public, I know you were doing it in different, like working on different channels with that, but like how long did that take until you were able to place it?
I want to say, I'm just remembering like my age. I was 29 when it got published. I remember I don't know why. I can't remember. I have no idea I barely remember what year it is now. I can just remember how old I was. I think I was 25 by the time I was ready to get it, ready to have other eyes on it. It got published when I was 29. So that's what, 4 years? So I want to say 4 years, but that also includes getting an agent, not having an agent, querying and selling it myself, and then 2 years between selling the book and getting it ready for publication. So it wasn't necessarily just selling the book and putting it out. I want to say the whole process took about maybe 4 or 5 years.
And then the part where you were like querying and finding the small finding Clash, what was that? Like a year of it or?
That process was luckily a little shorter. I think I queried agents for maybe about a year until I signed with my first one. And then we spent, so here we go. Now I'm starting to remember. I spent about a year querying until I signed with my first agent. And then we spent about a year working on the manuscript, working on the proposal before it went out. And then I want to say it didn't take that long after my agent accepted another job position and then I sold it myself. It only took a few months.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was actually probably the shortest part of the process because I really was like, I'm going to do this myself with or without an agent. And I'm very stubborn. And once I have my mind set on something, I just hit the ground running. And I think I want to say, I remember it was, you ready for this? I remember I got the acceptance. It was cold. It was March. I remember going to Applebee's with my mom and it was freezing. We got home and I remember coming home from Applebee's to my parents' house in Jersey and immediately having to use the bathroom. And I remember getting the email on the toilet, and I was like, oh, this is an appropriate time to get an acceptance.
Amazing. Post Applebee's toilet run.
Yeah, post Applebee's gastrointestinal 911, and then I get my book deal. So very appropriate. Yeah, so I want to say it was a few months. I think it took me like most of the fall to, yeah, I want to say it took all fall to like submit to these presses, and I got that Clash acceptance in February, so in the winter, so a few
Nice.
months.
So, I mean, what would your advice be, whether it's practical advice, things that you learned, do this, don't do this, as far as like etiquette or just mental health stuff? What would be your advice to people about going on submission?
So I think for anyone, I will say this for people who are going on submission for the first time, especially, I don't say made myself sick, but I really like neglected my health emotionally and physically just because I was focused on selling this book 24/7, 7 days a week. Like, this is my baby. And it's
Mhm.
almost like you're sending your kid to college, right? You want
Yeah.
to spend your time, raising them. But by the time they're 18 and they not just go to college, whatever they do when they turn 18, when they're adults, like, you want them to go off and spread their wings. So I was like, I need to nurture this project now. So when it's ready, it can fly out like a bat out of hell, which is more my speed. But I will say for first time, your first book, just know that these things take time. And my best advice is to, yes, it's great to care, and you're gonna be checking. I know you're gonna be checking your email. I can tell you 1,000 times to like try, but I will say, just try to be mindful of how often you are devoting time and energy, because you've already devoted so much time and energy into your work and the most important part, which is the writing, the process. So when that's out on submission, whether it's a novel or nonfiction, whatever it is, I say just try to spend time doing things that give you joy. And it can be something stupid like rewatching old episodes of Lost. It can be repotting your plants like I have to do. It can be calling your friends. But more importantly, I think if you have another project that's tugging at you, you should follow it. The way that I was able to sort of deal with this part of my second time around, I started writing another book
Mhm.
proposal, and I just had this idea, and I had a lot of fun writing this proposal, and that was a way for me to like stay rejuvenated. But also know that even if you don't have an idea of what you want to do next, that's okay too.
Mhm.
It's okay to just sort of coast and just, it's always going to come back to you, but try to just, I know this is corny, but try to just live your life and just realize, yes, give space to all the emotions that you're going to feel when you're on submission, but at the same time, lean into things that are going to give you some joy. Take a walk, grab a drink with a friend, take up smoking again.
Ah, yes.
Like, I say that I'm kidding. Don't do that. That's a horrible advice. I would never be serious about
That's so good.
that. Yeah. What would you do if I just pulled like, a huge cigarette, like one of those like long like Cruella Deville? I had it the whole time.
Amazing. Is there anything else you wanna share with listeners before we wrap?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I think this is so important because writing is a very solitary
Yeah.
activity, and the submission process is even more anxiety inducing. And, if you have a good agent, your agent's going to be, sort of your confidant there for you. But the most important advice I can give you is just lean on your friends during this time, especially your writer friends. Whether this is their fourth book, we all get anxious. I know writer friends of mine who are famous who are still anxious about their fourth or fifth books, and just know that it's normal to feel this way. Lean on your friends, take your mind off it. Like, the best things that I've done was just like calling another friend who's on submission. We just hopped on FaceTime and we just like gabbed about nothing for 2 hours. And that was enough for me to like reset my mind because it took me out of that spiral. So it could be something as simple as that, but just lean on your friends, lean on your loved ones, know that this is normal, and keep writing. Number one, keep writing.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Greg, and thank you for joining me for this episode of The Bleeders. Oh, writing is so much better with friends. I'm your host, Courtney Kosak, and hey, let's connect on social media. I am at Courtney Kosak. Last name is Kosak. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on TikTok. I'm everywhere. And make sure you're signed up for the Bleeders Companion Substack for all kinds of newsletter exclusives. I send out one awesome newsletter every week for free subscribers. There is a link in the episode description for that. And I've also launched a paid subscription where I take you behind the scenes of all my best bylines. I tell you how to pitch those places. I've written about my return to stand-up comedy and how I got ready to crush my showcase. I have written about my MFA and whether or not I think it is worth it. I also have some mini workshops behind the paywall. So like I said, there is a link for the newsletter in the episode description. I hope you join me over there, and I hope you join me back here next week for another all-new episode. In the meantime, happy bleeding!